the work we do determines, particularly around this emergency grant, whether 3 million students drop out next year or not.
I got that funding, that emergency aid, and it did feel like someone believed in me. Like I wasn't dealing with the challenges I was facing alone. I wasn't trying to build my future alone.
And then all the research shows, like I just shared, it has a meaningful difference to persistence in graduation. And if I think in terms of a donor, there's a significant story around an ROI, a return on their investment, that it really leads to improved graduation rates.
Hi, I'm Brandolon Barnett, host of Guide to Good and head of innovation and philanthropy with Giving Compass. And I'm happy to be joined in conversation today by Mike Nyland, CEO of Scholarship America. Hi, Mike.
Hi, good afternoon.
Afternoon to you as well. And thanks for joining us on the Guide to Good today. Why don't we start by just having you tell us a little bit about Scholarship America and how it all got started.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's such an honor to be here. Our story really began way back in 1958. And there was a local optometrist, his name was Dr. Irving Fratkin. And he had this really cool idea. And he thought, what if everybody in this small community gave just $1 to a scholarship fund? Would that be enough to give every student in that community what they needed to go to college? So it was kind of an experiment, and it worked. It was this grassroots effort that evolved into what we are today. Again, that has started way back in 1958. So we are now the nation's largest nonprofit scholarship administrator. That's really, I think, of a big community that all started with Dr. Fratkin. Fast forward to today, we now distribute beyond $300 million annually, and that is across 1,300 unique scholarship programs. We do that with communities like Dr. Fratkin, community foundations, Fortune 500 companies, family foundations, etc. And, one of the reasons I just love that story is it talks about the power of an individual and then coming together to bring a community together and how that can change millions of students' lives. So I love the history of the organization.
Yeah, it's a really great foundational story. And it's the work that you do is, I have to be frank and say it's really near and dear to my heart. I benefited from a similar scholarship program when I was in college. I remember at one point I wasn't sure if I'd be able to go back for my junior year and got a last minute infusion of emergency capital and was able to get on a Greyhound bus and make it all the way from Dallas, where I was living, to Pittsburgh. And so very aware of how your work changes lives. What's your personal connection to this work? I understand you also received a scholarship yourself.
Yeah, we share a similar background where I would not be where I'm at today if it was not for one of those small family foundation scholarships. And that is why I am so passionate about this mission. I was a full Pell Grant work-study student, had a hard time connecting all the dots financially. And so I had a private scholarship. And so I understand in a very, very deep and meaningful way of how a scholarship can really change the trajectory of a student's lives because I lived it. And I think what's hard for me to explain sometimes, but I suspect you understand given, the history you shared with me, it's not just the financial support. While of course you need that, that's a very tactical thing you need. What I feel and what I hear from students every day, it's about the message of recognition, the message of belonging, and that they feel like somebody has their back and believes in them. And for me, I find that has even more power than the money itself. Clearly, the money has to be there, but it's the message that goes around it that sometimes has the biggest impact on a student's life. And I know that's the truth for me. It has carried me forward to where I'm at today, and the money has long been paid. But it's that message it gave me that sticks with me for life.
Yeah, and I could say the same. You've been leading the organization since 2022. What have been some of your key priorities as CEO?
Yeah, there's a number of them. I think the key thing is to position us not just as like a back-end administrator that helps, do all the minutia tied to distributing over $300 million in scholarships annually, but more of a real strategic partner. And one of the ways we become a strategic partner to these organizations that we partner with is to really help them understand the importance of focusing on students with the greatest financial need, because that's where these programs can have the biggest difference to their communities, just like, you and I just shared. And so that's the biggest shift we made. And we've set out aggressive goals to try to get all scholarships going to students with the greatest financial need in the country. Secondary to that, my general philosophy is really servant leadership. And so how I apply that to our partners is by listening and helping them, again, to understand how we can leverage all of our experience and all of our years of knowledge and help them to achieve the goals they're trying to achieve. At the end of the day, what I want to make sure this organization represents to our partners is we're not just there to process their applications. We're there to help them create pathways to the students that they are trying to support that in many cases would otherwise be left behind.
Yeah, and I do have to ask, just really briefly, because the current environment can be very complicated, but how are you thinking as a leader about adjusting for, this sort of new reality that we're in? How's that affecting your work?
Yeah, I think we have a sense of urgency that is greater than ever before. I think when you read and understand the changes that are happening in the higher ed environment, the potential for students to get left behind is greater than ever before. And so I think our work is even more important than it has ever been. It's sort of, for me personally, again, going back to the story that I shared with you and, that you shared with me, our work is more important than it has ever been before. And I think it's a call to action. And that's how I see it. That's how I see this moment.
Yeah. What would you say, as you think about confronting this moment, trying to provide opportunities in an environment where I agree, the work that you're doing is probably more important than it has ever been, perhaps in human history.
I think so.
If we really think about what's at stake in our world, what makes Scholarship America different from other providers and other nonprofits and organizations that are out there working in the same sphere?
Yeah, I think scale is a big part of it. So when you work with large corporate foundations all the way down to philanthropists, et cetera, you learn a lot, especially when you do it for 65 years. And so you see and understand a lot of different scenarios. You have this breadth and depth of experience that helps you figure out what to bring to that situation. And every community has different needs and different complexities. And I think that scale and experience really differentiates ourselves and allows us to show up at various types of tables and provide support and expertise that helps people achieve what they're trying to achieve. When a sponsor works with us and kind of integrates their program into our technology or into our team that's supporting their program, what they are getting is sort of this system, this community of over 1,400 programs. And that network and that scale and the ability for us to pull in different resources, I think is quite unique. So whether you're a Fortune 500 company or somebody in a community just trying to make life better for the students in the community that you live, we've seen it and we know how to support you in making a difference.
Yeah, and you've already referenced this a bit, but you're not doing this work alone, right? Partnerships are pretty key to how you all operate. So what is the breadth of the sort of partnerships that you work with and how do those enable your work?
Yeah, great question. And so, if you think of organizations like Amazon, organizations like PepsiCo, and then, the endless family foundations that are trying to do good work in their communities, or even individual donors, those are diversity of organizations and individuals that we partner with. Now, some partners want to support students in a specific career field, like healthcare or engineering, or they want to focus on really specific communities. Some sponsors want to create opportunities for their employees to gain skills and grow in their careers within their organizations, or even children of their employees. We have scholarship programs that are focused on first-generation college students, military families, students facing all sorts of specific challenges. And what's exciting about this is we can help a local business owner create a single $5,000 scholarship program, or we can help a major corporation like PepsiCo or Amazon deliver millions of dollars annually. The common thread here, we will work with anybody and help anybody that is trying to make a meaningful difference in their community, however you define that community, and help students like us make a better life. And so whether it's one scholarship or 1,000 scholarships, we will show up and help them achieve them.
Yeah, and I think, I go back to the point you made earlier around this idea of the scholarship representing more than money. I know when I imagine you had a similar feeling. I got that funding, that emergency aid, and it did feel like someone believed in me. Like I wasn't dealing with the challenges I was facing alone. I wasn't trying to build my future alone. And so that emergency aid can be really powerful. And it's great that you're able to work with so many partners across the sort of spectrum of different businesses, different types. When you think about emergency aid, if we dig in a little bit, you all have been pioneering a lot of that work throughout your organization's history.
That's right.
Can you explain for our listeners and those watching, what is that emergency aid? How does it work? Why is it important? We've talked a little bit about the impact that it can have on folks, not just the funding itself, but that feeling, as I was saying, and as you were referencing earlier. But what is that emergency aid? How does it work? And then also, just to add another question, what's the evidence that it works?
Yeah, great question. And I think the best way to think about an emergency aid, at least how I think about it, because it's kind of a term we came up with within, the industry, if you will. It's really like a scholarship that gets there just in time. It's a fast turn scholarship that gets to the student when an emergency comes up. And so if you look at the research, about 3 million students leave college every year because of these quick unmet financial needs that are unexpected. And it's not because they're not talented enough, not smart enough, or motivated enough. It's because they have to make this real life decision because of a small financial setback. And so these crises, these emergencies can often be resolved with $1,000 or less in many cases. Like if a car breaks down and the student can't get to the classes, that emergency grant or scholarship can get to them just in time to get that car repaired. A medical bill, a rent payment, money to pay the internet, solving food insecurity. All those things are examples of what students with financial need are dealing with right now. And on average, based on our research and our years of doing this work, an emergency grant is $785, but that small amount can be the difference between them dropping out or graduating. It's worth remembering because I think it's one of those legacy things that we don't always apply to students. Is 74% of college students are now working either part-time or full-time. And it's still not enough for them to make ends meet. And so, if you think of that scenario where you're trying to make the ends meet, you're working full-time, trying to go to school, and then something goes wrong, car breaks down, etc., what are you going to do? You're going to drop out. So by giving them the aid they need just in time, the research shows it gets them to persist and graduate. It gets them to a different place, which is great. In terms of the evidence, and we report this frequently, it's quite compelling. During COVID, when the federal emergency aid ramped up, 82% of students who received it said it directly improved their chances of graduating. A study at Compton College showed that students receiving emergency grants of just $250 were twice as likely to complete their degree within a year. But, and again, it's not just about completion. 82% of students report improved personal well-being, and 76% felt their college cared for them. Kind of, how we both described it, we felt somebody had our back. And that's a really important part when you're juggling all these things in life. The speed of it, is critical. What we have shown from our research is that those dollars have to get there really quickly. So under 48 hours is kind of the magic number. And if you can get them the dollars they need within 48 hours, it shows significant improvements in retention than if you wait to get those dollars later in the term or so on. So it's a quick turn. It's a different type of scholarship, but it's critically important. And all the research shows, like I just shared, it has a meaningful difference to persistence and graduation. And if I think in terms of a donor, there's a significant story around an ROI, a return on their investment, that it really leads to improved graduation rates.
Yeah, and so much of what you're saying resonates with me. For me, it was $500. I was, the semester was starting and I literally could not afford to get to school. I could get there. The dorm room was ready. Everything was set. I'd have food, but I could not, and my family could not afford to get me there. So that funding came through and I was able to get there a few days late, but it felt like I was not going to be able to finish my degree just because of that small sum of money. So really,
sorry, it's something I'm very passionate about, because one of the things, as I moved up my, I didn't just land in this job, and I started as a financial aid counselor, and this was 25 years ago, and I remember even back then it was an issue, and that is because financial aid counselors have limited tools in their tool belt to help students in that situation. And again, I'm going to go back to kind of what we talked about earlier. Their tools are being even more limited, which is why it's so important for us to step up and solve those issues and solve those challenges for students.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No, I love the work that you all are doing. And, you mentioned 3 million students a year beyond just your story, my story, and I'm sure stories of probably many of the folks listening and watching this. Who are the students that benefit most, specifically when we think about emergency aid? What type of student? Who are those people?
Yeah. So it's crucial to get those dollars to quote unquote non-traditional students. And so students going to community college, first generation students, students who are also parents, students who are also caregivers for their parents. Those are the students that will benefit the most from earning a degree, but they also face the greatest barriers because they're trying to juggle so many things in their lives. These students also, I can tell you from personal experience of being a financial aid counselor, being in front of them, they're incredibly motivated. They're juggling full course loads, raising children, working jobs, navigating financial insecurity. And when these emergencies come up, if you can get them the dollars they need just in time, you will help them over that hurdle, and research shows they will persist and graduate. But those are the type of students that really benefit the greatest from emergency grants.
Yeah. And I understand you all also have a specific focus on student parents. Can you tell us a little bit about that population and your work there?
Yeah. And I think it's a great question, because I think it's often misunderstood that student parents are amongst the most, I would say, overlooked and also most high performing in higher education. Whenever I share this, I think folks are surprised that more than 1 in 5 college students, which is over 3.8 million people, are raising children while pursuing a post-secondary education. So 1 in 5. And despite those incredibly challenges of, raising a family, having kids, they actually earn higher GPAs than their non-parenting peers. So they are juggling more and they are performing at a higher level. Nearly 3 of 4 are women. More than half are students of color. And the vast majority are low-income first-generation students. All combined, they face unique barriers: poverty, unaffordable childcare, sometimes isolation, and frankly, institutions, while they're doing their best, are not designed with them in mind. They're really designed for the traditional student. And so again, it kind of comes back to the work we are doing to support them is more important than ever before.
And what's the impact there? I mean, I can imagine the impact going beyond the student parents, when you're helping them to stay in their education, to be able to have some stability, to perform to the level that you're highlighting, that also helps the lives of their children. But when you all look into that question, what's the impact of that support specifically for student parents?
Yeah, there's some really great research that has happened around this topic. And, organizations like ECMC Foundation are just doing phenomenal work in this area, and others. But what the research has shown is there's the social return on that investment. And again, if you remember, it's not big, it is quite enormous. So a single mom who contributes or completes her bachelor degree, what the research has shown is she will contribute over $220,000 in taxes over her lifetime. So if you go back to that and think about it, it was what, $500, $750. That's significant contribution to her community over her lifetime. Research also has shown that a $3,000 increase in a parent's earnings during early childhood will yield a 17% increase in their child's future earnings. So not only is it impacting their community, it's impacting the future generation. What the research also shows is, what we're really talking about is breaking these cycles, right? So over 70% of adults with college educated parents earn degrees themselves versus 26% of first generation students. So, again, if you can get the first generation moms, like the example I sent earlier, get them through the emergency grants, you are not only impacting them, but the next generation. All that said, that's why we have launched the National Emergency Scholarship Fund for Student Parents. And that is in partnership with ECMC Foundation, as well as the Trellis Foundation and others. It's just getting the word out about how important this is that I think is proving to be the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, I imagine so. And for those out there listening who want to support and helping you overcome that challenge, what are the different ways they can get involved with Scholarship America? How can they support you?
Yeah, there are many, many ways that we are able to help individuals and families to make an impact. And as I alluded to throughout the conversation, it doesn't matter how big or small, we're able to meet the people where they're at. And the simplest way is making a charitable gift directly to Scholarship America. Every dollar goes to removing financial barriers for students. Many people don't realize they can also pretty easily start their own scholarship program with us. You don't have to worry about technology. You don't have to worry about security. We have that all figured out. We can find the students. We process all the applications. We get the dollars where they need to be on time. It's quite easy to start your own scholarship program. For those passionate about emergency aid work, which clearly we are and I am, you can contribute directly to our Student Parent Emergency Aid Fund to help those mothers that I talked about earlier. We also work with people who want to create memorial scholarships or celebrate milestones or even involve their entire family in giving. There's endless ways we can partner with individuals and companies and communities and organizations to help create a scholarship program to help their community.
Well, I'm getting intrigued and my brain is racing as well. I thought of, for many years, starting a scholarship fund in memorial to my mother who passed away. But, even when I could barely afford to go to school, was sending me a small amount, every semester, whatever she could. But I've, sort of told myself in the back of my head, I'm sure like many, that, I don't have enough maybe to start. What do you say specifically to those folks who are out there like me at certain points thinking, I'd love to start a scholarship program, but not sure they have enough to really make a difference? How do you respond to them?
We talked about it earlier. I think from my perspective, at this point in time in the history of our country, it's more important than ever that everybody does what they can do, even if it's one small thing. And I immediately think back to where we started this conversation with Dr. Fratkin, who just had this idea. And he's like, if everybody just gave $1, would it have an impact? And look at where we are today. And I think that's the type of spirit we need to bring to our communities today. You don't need to solve everything, but if you can solve one thing or something in your community, you are making a difference. You don't need millions to change lives. $1,000 scholarship can be transformational to a student. And as we talked about, the very, very good research that has been done, small emergency grants can make huge differences, as as you shared. We work with donors to design programs to fit their budget, to fit their vision, whether that's one scholarship, a dozen scholarships, or 500. It really doesn't matter because you are helping a student. But I think what matters the most is the intention to help students succeed, particularly in students right now with the financial barriers that we need to remove, and provide all the expertise we can to help a donor or a sponsor make that vision a reality. I'll go back to the stories we shared earlier, in this conversation. It's funny, just recently I met the great granddaughter. This is just this summer at a 4th of July party. I met the great granddaughter of the family that gave me my scholarship. It was just an amazing experience. I wasn't anticipating it. And we hugged. I shed a tear. But I think what that speaks to is just the legacy of one scholarship having on one individual. And now I'm talking to that great granddaughter of the person that, right? It's real. You can't make it up. It's something that I think will stay with not only the student for the lifetime, but also the donor for the lifetime.
Yeah, and it's real human connection in a world that is badly in need of it. And, as we think about that world, we're in the middle of a period of, no matter what sort of side of things you're on, it's undeniable that we've got massive sort of political upheaval. We've got the onset or rise of artificial intelligence, which is going to impact, the prospects for graduating students. When you think about the future that's ahead of us, what do you sort of think as far as a vision for the future of Scholarship America, specifically in your work, in the face of all these changes?
Well, I love how you posed the question, because I think this is one of those things that everybody can agree on. There's no divisiveness in my vision that there should be no student in this country who is motivated and wants to, has a dream to pursue higher ed, that it should be derailed by a financial barrier. And we at Scholarship America with our partners can easily remove that. Like that, I think we all can rally around. I want to build a future where if emergency comes up, like we talked about, that emergency aid is a common and easily accessible as traditional financial aid for any student. So they don't have to, make the decision of fixing their car or going to class. I want every student parent to know that somebody believes in them. And while they're juggling all these things, we know they have the ability to create a better future for themselves and their family. Like the story I shared with you, the very personal story, that we're just not funding education. We have the opportunity to unlock human potential in creating, I think, generational change. The work we do determines, I think, whether, particularly around this emergency grant, whether 3 million students drop out next year or not. Think about that impact about their families, but then the next generation. And we have the ability to impact that today. That's my vision for Scholarship America.
Yeah, it's an amazing vision and really amazing work. For those out there listening or watching, how can they connect with Scholarship America?
Yeah, please come to our website. You can learn a lot about the different ways we partner with organizations big and small. If you're interested in starting a scholarship or contributing to emergency aid, reach out to our team. They are ready and willing to help. They would love to talk to you about how they can partner with you to help a student. Most importantly, whether you can give $100 or $100,000, you can make a very meaningful difference in a student's lives, particularly the students that we talked about throughout this conversation. At Scholarship America, we believe recognition and opportunity can unlock human potential, and every gift, no matter the size, is an act of recognition and will change lives.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike, for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me, helping us share this important work and getting the word out. Together, I'm confident we can ensure that, every student has the opportunity to pursue their dreams. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. And yes, we can. This has been a conversation with Mike Nyland, President and CEO of Scholarship America. Thank you for joining us on Guide to Good.
Thank you.